Well, let's get more on this developing story now from our global affairs analyst, Marco Vicenzino. Marco, thanks for coming in tonight. It looks like, from reports coming out of the country, are certainly saying anyway, that Erdogan's party, the AK party, have lost their majority in parliament. What's your reaction to that?
The polls pointed to such a result. I mean, obviously it deprives them of the majority, but also deprives them of the ability to want to implement a constitutional change that would have changed the system into a stronger presidential system and concentrated more power into the presidency. So for the opposition, they seem to, it's a result, it's a gain, it's a victory, but that doesn't mean that the opposition is a united, coherent, monolithic front. Their main objective was to prevent him from gaining that supermajority. The result today seems to have achieved that.
Do you think that this is a sign that Turks want to change in the country, so they're not happy with the AK party?
Well, it depends who you ask in Turkey. Turkey remains a polarized society. Still, he gains probably a bit more than 40% of the vote, which is enormous, relatively speaking, compared to the other parties. The opposition, which constitutes at this stage, it seems, more than 50%, as I mentioned, is not monolithic. They have different agendas, but they seem to have stemmed, at least for now, the historic momentum of Erdogan and the AK party, which have had since 2003, for the past 13 years, more or less uninterrupted victories. This seems to, like I said, it's a halt in that historic momentum. But there's always a chance that at some stage, if they find difficulty in creating and forming a new coalition government, they may call re-elections. Erdogan is a very compelling personality. If he can galvanize his base to achieve the supermajority that he wants, it's a possibility that, in other words, today's victory was a huge setback, was a massive reversal for the governing party. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're down.
What do you think that Erdogan will make of, when you look at sort of Erdogan's image in the country, in Turkey, what do you think he'll make of these results in terms of sealing his place as Turkey's most dominant political figure? Do you think that is still valid? He's still the most,
regardless of today's result, he's still the most dominant political figure in Turkey's modern history since Kemal Atatürk, since the foundation of the Turkish Republic in the early 1920s. There's been no leader between Atatürk and Erdogan that has matched Erdogan in terms of his ability to change the country. He basically, when he gained power in 2003, he defied enormous odds. He had many adversaries, whether it was the military, the courts, or the Gülenist movement. He pretty much neutralized all three of them. Had he won today's election, it would have been the crowning achievement in that historical process. But for now, like I said, it seems to have been stemmed, halted for now.
And when it comes to the relationships that Turkey have with the EU, how are they at present? Because, like you mentioned, Erdogan did a lot for Turkey. They've seen a lot of growth, they've seen a lot of prosperity within the country. How are relations within the EU at the moment?
When you talk about growth, one of the greatest achievements of Erdogan has been the exponential growth in the economy and to create a new middle class. From the time he came to power in 2003, per capita income in Turkey was around the $2,000 range. Today, in 2015, it's around $10,000, enormous growth. In terms of Europe and the relations between Turkey and Europe, I think for the most part there's a realization that Turkey will not become a part of the European Union. That's not to underestimate the economic benefits and rights that it has with the European Union in terms of selling its products. So continuity regarding relations with the European Union in terms of its neighbors, its immediate neighbors. You have the war in Iraq, in Syria. Turkey has absorbed over 2 million Syrian refugees. Its relationship with Iraq, with Iran, it lives to its west. In terms of Europe, it's somewhat predictable. In terms of its relationships with its neighbors to its south and its east, it's somewhat fraught. Particularly, obviously, it wants to see the overthrow of the Assad regime. Not sure if that's going to happen. It would love to see an agreement between the United States and Iran and the other powers on the nuclear issue. That would release an enormous amount of trade between Iran and Turkey, and it can be a huge game changer.
Marco Vicenzino, thank you very much indeed for that.